I think the word proximity is a really interesting word to be using at the moment. How close are we to certain things? How close are we to culture? How close are we to one another?
Being a cultural proximity just means, well, everything we want is right here. Every person that we want to communicate with, we have access to at all times.
Culture is art. Culture is food, it's music, it's location, it's geography. It's really just humans doing what they do in the proximity of one another and what happens when we're all together.
Distance, borders used to separate us from one another as well as culture. Today, those barriers have been falling, they continue to fall.
We are closer than ever to people that we don't even know. You might stumble across opinions or people who are far-flung across the world. In that way, I feel like we are closer together.
People could have told you anything about me, and that's all you had to go off of. But now it's like, nobody can say that. You can visually see who I am. You can see somebody's DNA.
Proximity means being close. Like, you feel lonely if you're left out of that loop.
If it weren't for Instagram or Snapchat, there would be no conversation starter for like the next day.
Proximity has allowed me to see the world differently, and not only just the world, but the way people think about the world. Like, that is important to me, that has fundamentally changed my understanding of how people process the world. That wasn't the way I read that. That wasn't the way I saw that. That wasn't the way I experienced that, and I'm thankful that I was in proximity to your thoughts.
We're always right here with everyone and everything at all times, which is exciting and terrifying at the same time.
We're seeing each other with technology between us, with data between us, with inequality between us, with our pasts between us. When we talk about proximity, I don't think we're further away or closer to one another than we ever were before. It's just what separates us and what connects us is changing quite radically.
In the past, proximity and a feeling of closeness or connectedness have been one and the same. Now we have proximity that may be disconnected from that feeling of closeness. That's pretty crazy. I mean, that's a really different society than the one that we've been living in. And I don't think we've really come to terms with what that could look like going forward.
Okay, so this is you, your little line. Here are maybe your family and your close friends. And we can call this close culture. So what you have is a bunch of small communities. But then there's something else that all of these people were a part of. And we can call that a mass culture. This is what the celebrities are saying, what the newspapers are saying, what the politicians are saying. We all could hear that stuff. We all could see that stuff, right? So we all participated in this, but we didn't participate in an active, interactive way. It was a one-way concept, right? So mass culture would project down to all of these close cultures. Then came the last 20 years and we developed the internet. Now these people have a way to talk together, even if they don't live in the same place. And we can call this a crowd culture, kind of a national discourse. The crowd culture is very powerful, and the people who run the mass culture can hear it. What happens is the crowd culture helps to inform the mass culture, but there's something else as well. You are hugely into comic books, okay? And that you just kind of enjoy that alone. But now, just say that person enjoys comic books, and these two, and these three over here, and this one, and this guy. The internet gives you a way to find those people. And we can call these deep cultures. There's a very blurry line between a lot of these at this point. They affect each other, they bleed into each other. Any one person can kind of jump into the crowd culture, for example, which can then influence the mass culture. These things are all very close together suddenly. And what we can kind of call that is this new general big idea of a culture of proximity.
This is YesJulz. We're doing aux cord wars. We are looking for two people to hop in the car, take over the aux cord, and battle it out for a very good prize. Let's see who's here.
I don't really care what you doing. I'm rolling in this Buick, but I'm losing my mind with YesJulz and probably mapping out my next move.
Get a little
I was like, just trying to scrap up money from my paychecks from the clubs to go rent a venue and pay a DJ, get sound, whatever. Got to a point where people in Toronto were like, oh, bring this up to Toronto. We're like, oh, you gotta do this in LA. And we're like, oh shit, we just branded a party. When you're in it, you don't realize that that's what's happening. And then when you speak to somebody and they're like, oh, you got 2,000 people to come somewhere in 3 days, no big artists or anything, it was just your name on the flyer. All right, well, we got this much money for you to come over here next time. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. So I guess I'm a brand now.
So what happens when we have such a close proximity to one another is that regular social media users, celebrities, and brands start to take on and inhabit the traits of one another.
There has been this sense that brands are meant to be your best buddy, that brands are meant to be like people and behave like people.
The future does not fit in the containers of the past. We have in our mind certain containers, those are blowing apart. So what a brand is, what an entertainer is, and what an individual is different. And if you sort of look at people's Facebook feeds, they're trying very hard to curate their day so that they will entertain me, and therefore I will think of them as a brand.
This is Connor.
Hey guys, what's up? It's your girl Liza coming at 2, because it's my second channel.
I'm definitely a brand. I'm a brand even if I didn't want to be a brand. If you're a figure, you're a brand. You know, your name is your brand. Your integrity is your brand.
Today's performer is kind of a hybrid. We're not just performers anymore. We're also kind of marketers, and we're also kind of ad people, and we're also we're our own PR people to a degree, and we have to tick so many boxes in order to create this sphere that reaches people on various platforms.
Saul, you're famous online.
I'm Susie and I love to ride bicycles. I'm Tommy and I love soccer. I'm Saul and I have crippling paranoia.
There's an idea between brands that we're used to thinking about from big businesses and brands around people. There's like a parity there now. Why? Because, well, 50 years ago, you as an individual couldn't film a TV ad for yourself and then distribute it to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of households. Today, you can.
Things that have historically had audiences and individuals who have never had an audience are trending toward one another.
Well, we're definitely in a strange age where people can put themselves into the limelight, make a fan base for themselves without a network, without an agent.
I mean, these are like 14, 15, 16-year-olds. Most of them actually say like, oh, I want to be an internet star. There's this perception of like the accessibility of it. And most of them have channels. Most of them have Twitter accounts. Most of them, I mean, they're actively creating content on their own.
YouTubers that make it, I think at this point, we have to call them celebrities. They're invited to award shows. A lot of them make it onto movies, into TV shows. It is encouraging to know that these people just had a video camera and started doing some silly skits, and then now they have a record deal or they're in a movie. It really makes it feel like everyday people can build themselves up.
Many people that pursue sort of a digital career actually started as fans first.
This right here is what I got signed by Tyler Posey. I actually had like a good 2 minutes. He jumped up out of his seat because I told him how much Teen Wolf really meant to me.
Mine says Angel, which represents Castiel from Supernatural, and hers is Hunter, which represents Dean from Supernatural.
This is from an anime called Fullmetal Alchemist that I got with my older brother. It started with a lot of anime. I was very, very into anime back in middle school. These characters that I loved, I had these ideas for stories. I would write a story, share it with maybe 1 or 2 friends, and then it would go into a journal and never see the light of day until kind of started finding the internet. Really, there's fan fiction of anything you want. When a creator puts something out there into the world, I feel like they kind of release their control over it. The fan base kind of ingests it, metabolizes it, and decides what they think is right for it. Fans can be a very, very powerful force.
Can fans control culture? Absolutely. I mean, culture is based off of the masses. I think fans could definitely control culture, and the fans do control culture.
It's the same thing as the kid in the Bronx who first started rapping. And someone else was like, this is interesting, I'm gonna try this, and build upon it, and remix it, and build upon it, and remix it, build upon it. And what took years and took people who needed access to gatekeepers in order to finally get this to become a part of, culture, now happens so much faster.
There's so many people now who get to decide like what we talk about and how we talk about it and what that looks like and how quickly information spreads, that the gatekeepers have fundamentally changed. If we means the general public, then we are more in control of culture today than we have been before. We live in a context where everybody's a content creator. I think that is a beautiful thing. I think the consequence of it is that everybody's a content creator, which means that there is just infinitely more content. Sometimes this inclination to just consume because it exists, right? It's like why people just eat because there's food. It's like people just like stay online. Sometimes I'm up in the middle of the night, like checking Twitter, and it's like I'm exhausted, my eyes are burning. I don't know why I'm still awake.
Look, when I'm done with school, I usually check social media. During school, I check social media. Like, I use it like almost too often, if that makes sense. I just really hope that it doesn't take over our lives, because I feel like it's already taken over my life, and I don't really like that, but I can't help it.
We evolved to be primates who interact with a limited number of other primates. We didn't really evolve to make our brands or our beliefs known to thousands or millions of people and to process what those people think about us.
People have realized that you don't really care to hear about the opinion of someone who doesn't like you and just wants to spend their afternoon tweeting horrible things at you. It's easier for you to close yourself off from those people now.
People are curating their lives online. Our social feeds have hyper-distorted reality. If you live your life looking at your particular stream, the danger is that your perception of reality is kind of it's slightly distorted.
At what stage are our minds being colonized by a Facebook stream or a Twitter stream or a Netflix recommendation engine? Very much like someone said, if you're getting it for free, you probably are the product.
In the first 24 hours after the election, just in my own social media, I watch people struggle to understand the other side. I watch people struggle to express themselves and why they voted for the person they did, and how they hoped that they wouldn't be misunderstood by their friends. And then about 24 hours later, it felt like my feed had been taken over by memes. And these memes were doing the job of signaling, this is who I am, this is what group I'm part of, this is how I feel about the election, and this is what I think of you. I could see a future for us where we splinter into small groups that have language and visual memes that are used to cement and amplify and convey group identity in ways that are not very fluid, in ways that are very fixed.
When the protest started, when I was in the street in Ferguson, I didn't know anybody in the state of Missouri. Twitter was like the friend that was always awake, right? It like became the only way that I could really process everything, that I could always be in conversation with other people. We didn't know each other's names, we didn't know each other's faces, but we knew each other's hearts. And so many of us met each other for the first time in digital spaces, and we trusted each other. I think of hashtags as paper clips on the internet. And what it allows us to do is like paper clip conversations so that there's an easy way to be a part of it, to understand it, to see it, to participate in it. And in that sense, I think paper clips are important. I think that they help us simplify access to information. I think that we're just at the beginning of seeing the power of hashtags, of of activism that originates online to impact material gains and live reality and offline organizing. I think that what the protest showed beginning in Ferguson was that we can use digital tools to organize in new ways. I think, though, that we will see that shift.
Trust in institutions is measurably pretty low. Trust in media is at an all-time low. If you look at trust in Congress, it's also at an all-time low. What's interesting is that trust in other people might actually be higher than it's been in the past. Think about Uber. There's no licensing. This isn't a taxi. It doesn't belong to a company. It's not regulated by a city, but this car pulls up outside of the restaurant you've just been eating at, and you hop in with some person you've never met before. That requires actually a pretty high level of interpersonal trust. It's not just an Uber, it's an Airbnb, it's an eBay. There are lots of ways in which we're expressing trust for one another that are a little bit surprising.
I've never met anybody from Reddit in real life. And for me, I'm perfectly fine with that because I get what I need, not necessarily from knowing your name, your age, your location, but from hearing things that make me feel a little less alone. I have more genuine conversations with people behind a screen and a keyboard who don't know my name, don't know my face. Sometimes it's not even like I need a whole paragraph saying like, oh, Lauren, you're like the best person in the world, you're beautiful. Sometimes I just need to hear like, me too.
I don't want to have to think about everything I do. I just want to be able to be me and not be afraid. I'm sick of censoring myself. This is just one little part of who I am, and I'm not going to let my sexuality define or confine me.
I think that there is a closeness that exists, or a perception of intimacy that exists within the digital landscape that doesn't exist as much in traditional. I know when I watch Connor Franta, I watch Logan Paul, that they're like one of us. They're talking about the things that we talk about. They are relatable. There is constantly a desire, constantly an interest from a fan base into the intimacy of someone's life. When you're putting yourself on display as the content and they want more of the content, it's really simply they want more of you.
I think celebrities that, like, who don't keep a facade, you feel closer to them.
I feel like I can connect with like famous people more on social media because I could see like what they eat, what their workout routine is, like what they've been doing for the past week, or like sometimes they'll like announce big events that are coming up, like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna have an album drop like next week or whatever.
The way I let my fans in on my life through social media is I basically give them like 5 to 7% of my life. It's a thin line of what I share and what I keep to myself, and me and my wife always have a debate about this. He's like, is that a picture that we keep, or is that a picture that the world see?
You have access to their Instagram accounts, you have access to their music, but you don't have a knowledge of everything. We finally reached that point in social media where people realize how easy it is to get access to someone if you really want to. And I think that's made people pull back a bit.
If you're like me and you show so much of your life, people feel entitled after a certain point to know what's going on. You know, the constant question is like, oh, so who are you dating? Like this and that, because people want to know because they feel like they're entitled because you let them know so much. And then it gets to a point where sometimes you don't have control. I'm giving any Tom, Dick, and Joe an open door to just come slap me in the face every time I go on my phone.
Just roast our existence.
Oh, I actually got one. My sister's texting me. I'm not responding. You realize that it's using this season. I want to be like, oh, I don't care. Like, I don't care what other people think, but I honestly, like, I do care what other people think.
You know, I compare myself to, you know, celebrities or whatever, and I'm just like, you know, what are they doing? Should I be I should be doing that, or, you know, I should be, you know, posing the way they're posing.
There's always an element of fantasy with social media. Your Instagram photo might look great, but you might have had a really awful time at that party.
I'm like, I have spent an hour proofreading this freaking Instagram caption, like changing the emojis, which emoji like is less like crazy and more just like casual. I guess I censor myself on platforms where I am less hidden behind anonymity.
We have these incredible capacities to track each other's eye movements, facial expressions, body language that help us understand whether what we're hearing is an authentic belief. We lose all of that when we go online. And so we look for new currencies, new tools to help us understand, is what I'm seeing in text form or emoji form or photographic form, is this authentic?
If you're not authentic, people will call it out. I mean, people call out authentic things as not being authentic.
My approach to putting out things on social media is very organic. You know, I don't want it to feel like something that was paid for. Everything should feel believable. The person on the other end is not stupid, you know, and this is what I tell a lot of brands. I tell a lot of companies, I said, listen, you know, that campaign is cool, but you can't, like, nobody's being told what to do anymore.
We see it all the time with our clients that are either in feature films or books. The fan base is like, wow, like there was a moment where it was just you and I, right? We were in a bedroom together, you were talking, I was listening. It was a really intimate, authentic experience. And now you've gone over here to Hollywood or you're on tour and you're not tweeting at us and you seem to have sort of elapsed this sort of like smaller ecosystem and intimate relationship that we used to have.
Sometimes people are so busy acting that they're living in other people's minds. And as a result, they've forgotten who they are.
In me being real on social media, I became fake. I started dating this guy and whatever, I did my hair a certain way. I posted a picture and people were like, oh, you should go back to like doing your hair like this. And so the next day I changed my hair and he was like, oh, you didn't like it this way? I was like, no, you know, somebody mentioned in a comment or he's like, wow, wish I had that much influence on your decisions. Like, what do I need to like go comment on your shit to make you want to do something? And I was like, man, I'm a loser. Like, that's crazy, you know? I'm like listening to these strangers on the internet and I was like, oh, this guy's right.
I think there's something we as people deeply want in connection that the internet, for all of its triumphs, has only started to deliver. And I think about this a lot in the context of social media for the last decade, which has been largely based around people connecting in a very superficial way. It's a lot of people. It's 1.6, 1.7 billion on Facebook alone. But we're all basically sharing a specific filtered version of ourselves. The real connection that really drives us as people, that has, since the beginning, is a much deeper connection. Those connections take security, and that takes time.
Just say this is the timeline of history, right? A revolution in electricity. The power is on. A revolution in transportation. We live in a world suddenly where we can fly. This would have seemed unbelievable to someone over here. This last century, we started developing the concept of computers. So now we live in a world with computers. That very quickly turns into a world with the internet. Smartphones, ubiquitous virtual reality, a really intense amount of artificial intelligence. That's like this. The shape of this curve is intense. It's an exponential curve. Suddenly, we're getting to a point where you maybe even 5 or 10 years in the future, you would go to there and you'd be unrecognizable to you. It would be so different. We're moving to a world where we have genuine superpowers, things that people in the past would think are complete magic. The thing is, we're still human beings. Behind all the technology, we're still a bunch of biological humans with all the good things and bad things that come along with that, with our tribal instincts, our ability to hate, and our instincts of empathy and altruism and our ability to love. And both sides of that are still here, except now both sides of those have superpowers.
It feels like the internet's been with us for a long time. It feels to many of us like we've always been on social media. It also feels like social media is all about us. You know, it feels like we're in a world of greater and greater personalization, where the things that I like, the things that matter to me, influence what I'm gonna see in the future. But really, We're in the very early days of the algorithms that make those decisions for us online. I would hope that with repeated proximal interactions, with repeated proximity, we feel like we're more a part of each other's lives. We care more. We find new ways to express that may be impoverished right now, but could develop over time. And I really hope that that's our future.
You're no longer singled out. It's like, oh, there's that one weird kid that likes this thing. But now it's like, you're never the only person that likes something. Other people feel the same way and have been changed the same way by something that's not real, but it has real effects on people.
People are taking advantage of the opportunity to live in a cultural bubble of people who are like-minded, and you don't have to take in cultural conversations from other people who you don't like.
It's empowering, and it's like a hammer. You can like bash someone's head, and you can use your anonymity to, you know, just wreak havoc, but you can use a hammer to build a house too. You can, you know, do good.
I think proximity at its root is about closeness, is about a recognition that there is something similar about our situations. And when I think about a culture of proximity, to me, it is saying that, like, I see you.
We know that Generation Z, you know, that kind of younger than a millennial, they're not just digital native. Digital kind of predates them. That's the first generation that'll be like that. They perceive injustice differently, and they fight for different causes, but they also understand what has happened around them. They understand that their parents might have been affected by the recession. They understand that their living standards aren't going to be maybe the same as their parents. And they understand that maybe society needs them. They're maybe the nicest generation that there has ever been. That's exciting. That's interesting. And that's what's radically going to change.